week 4 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units. I have his sleepers this week. The first DST, the Arizona Cardinals. I know this game's most likely going to be a shootout. We saw Washington go into Cincinnati on Monday night in week 3, put up 38 points on the board. But this Commander team, at times, they've had trouble moving the football. We saw it in week 2 with the Giants. And then Arizona Cardinal team, their defense has made some plays. I know the Commanders haven't turned it over yet this season, but they're due, and maybe the Cardinals get a few in this one. Week 1 at Buffalo, 34 points allowed, 2 sacks, a fumble recovery, a kick return touchdown. Week 2 versus the Rams, only 10 points allowed, 5 sacks, a fumble recovery. And last week versus a good Lion offense, 20 points, 2 sacks, and an interception. So they've been serviceable, believe it or not, the first 3 weeks of the season is Arizona. Available 99% of fantasy leagues, but obviously it's still a dart throw. But like I said, the Commanders, their offense could be hit or miss, and last week obviously they were a big hit, scoring 38 points, but who knows this week the game plan, and if this defense could come out and have a nice start versus former head coach who's the offensive coordinator now for the Commanders, and Cliff Kingsbury, the next DST, the Los Angeles Rams. So this defense has been getting torched in the early going, especially in week 2 at the Arizona Cardinals. They lost that ball game 41-10, but this week a good matchup at the Chicago Bears. Give up the 3rd most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. And obviously with Aaron Donald retired, this defense is going to be nowhere close to where it was, is this Los Angeles Rams team. So the last couple of weeks, like I mentioned, week 2 with Arizona, 41 points allowed, a sack, a fumble recovery. And then last week versus San Francisco, I know they were at Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle. They gave up 24 points, a sack, and a fumble recovery. So this week they go to Soldier Field. They're available in 88% of fantasy leagues. Williams, he's been a crash test dummy so far in the early going, taking a lot of sacks, taking big hits. This offensive line isn't good for the Chicago Bear team. And also Williams, he's holding on to the football way too long as well as the rookie. So I think Los Angeles, they could go out there, make a few plays, and then not really an option, only in the deepest of leagues. If you need a desperation defense this week, in the 3rd and final defense DST I have as a sleeper is the Denver Broncos. So this Bronco defense shut down a pretty solid offense last week, only holding Tampa Bay to 7 points. And this week they go to MetLife and versus the New York Jets. And believe it or not, this Bronco team has been one of the better units the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 1 at Seattle, 26 points, 2 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery, 2 safeties. Week 2 versus the Steelers, 13 points allowed, 2 sacks. And then last week at Tampa Bay, like I said, they went in there and they destroyed that offensive line. 7 points allowed, only 7 sacks, an interception, and a fumble recovery. Denver's DST available right now in 85% of fantasy leagues. I know this Jet offense is definitely a solid unit with Aaron Rodgers on the center instead of Zach Wilson this season. With Rodgers, you know, if you're going to get a hand on him, he's going to go down. And like I said, this defense, they're going to get pressure from different angles. This Jet offensive line is a good O-line, but it also has some aging veterans as well, where I think this young defense can make a few plays. And if they get a hand on Rodgers, could possibly come up with a few sacks. If you need a DST in deeper leagues, Denver's out there, like I said, as a sleeper in 85% of fantasy leagues. That's a few defense DST units. I have his sleepers for week 4 of the fantasy football season.